how much protein should you be eating when you're actually leaning out and you are implementing a caloric restriction. So protein intake during energy restriction. In overweight and obese individuals, the ensuing body mass loss that follows a protracted energy deficit generally confers physical as well as metabolic health benefits such as improved hepatic and skeletal muscle insulin sensitivity, as well as improvements in beta cell function. However, a concerning consequence of energy restriction is that lost weight is comprised in general of a 25% loss of lean body mass, a significant proportion of which is skeletal muscle. So when you're trying to lose weight, a normal person, when they try to lose weight, 25% of all of the weight loss is actually lean body mass, and a significant greater proportion of that is muscle mass, which is not good. There is actually a linear relationship between the amount of muscle mass that you carry and your likelihood to die of any disease. So losing muscle mass is always a bad thing. I don't care who you are. Don't lose muscle, man. Following a 20% in energy deficit, post-absorbed rates of muscle protein synthesis were found to be reduced by 19% compared to measurements made during body mass maintenance. So when you implement an energy deficit, you lose 19% of muscle protein synthesis rates. This decrement in muscle protein synthesis was likely precipitated by reduced intermuscular anabolic signaling, as evidenced by a 35 and 30% lower phosphorylation of AKT and 4-EBP1, respectively, which AKT sits above the mTOR. If you know the kind of the canonical pathway of the mTOR, AKT sits above the mTOR, and the elevation factor for EBP1 sits below the mTOR, which one of them, the elongation factor, increases the efficiency at which protein synthesis is conducted, and the AKT, because it sits above the mTOR, and the mTOR basically coordinates the whole cell protein synthesis and growth, is very important for hypertrophy. Given that muscle protein synthesis is an energy-demanding process, the declines observed during caloric restriction likely represent a conservation-oriented mechanism to avoid the insufficient utilization of ATP for growth-promoting processes when food availability is low. For example, Areta et al. Observed a 27% reduction in myofibril protein synthesis after only 5 days of energy restriction in young men and women. So, the gist of it is that when you are dieting down and trying to lose body fat, you decrease the amount of energy that you are consuming. And this is also a very responsive adaptation. Within 5 days, you have a 27% reduction in myofibrillar protein synthesis. So it's that quick. And it's that quick because when energy intake is low, muscle fibers try to conserve energy, and muscle protein synthesis takes a lot of energy to take place. It consumes a lot of ATP, so that gets shut off. And lastly, and this is the important point that I want us to focus in for the day, which is the amount of protein that you should be consuming when you're trying to lean out. Engaging in resistance exercise during an energy deficit has sparing effect on lean body mass. So just by doing your hypertrophy work, you can spare your muscle mass. Great. Indeed, lean body mass was retained following a 4-week energy restricted diet in individuals who resistance trained 6 days a week and consumed 1.2 grams per kilogram of protein, a daily protein intake that was hypothesized to be insufficient to prevent reductions in lean body mass in the absence of exercise. So this amount of protein in the absence of resistance training would actually not allow for the retention of all of the lean body mass. But when in conjunction with resistance exercise, 6 days a week, 4 weeks later, it actually spared all of the lean body mass. Moreover, participants who consume 2.4 grams per kilogram of proteins a day, that's 3 times the RDA, in conjunction with the same 6-day-a-week exercise regime, increase their lean body mass over the 4-week period. So not only can you preserve your muscle mass when you're dieting down, but if you go above the protein recommendations for hypertrophy, which is 2.2 grams per kilogram, if you bump that up even just slightly to 2.4 grams, you can actually increase your lean body mass over a 4-week period. Areta et al. Reported that resistance exercise restored the 27% decrease observed in post-absorbed muscle protein synthesis during energy restriction, and when paired with protein injection, significantly enhanced muscle protein synthesis above values obtained in energy balance. Using ingestion of deuterium oxide, we also demonstrated a preservation of integrated myofibril protein synthesis, which was only observed in participants consuming 2.4 grams per kilogram a day. So, resistance exercise actually negates the decreased muscle protein synthesis post-meal, which was reduced by 27%, and when they measured the difference in between participants based on how much protein they eat per day, the group that was above the recommended values for hypertrophy, they consumed 2.4 grams per kilograms, and they had perfectly normal integrated myofibril protein synthesis, which means that when you try to lose weight, you should go above the recommended protein intake for hypertrophy, which is 2.2, which we conclude with thus athletes who tend to be leaner than the general population, which should be you, and who have more training experience, which should be you, have been recommended to consume protein intakes upwards of 3 grams per kilogram a day to attempt to prevent lean body mass loss during energy restriction.